Good morning, dreamers and faithful ones.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope that you've been exercising your faith ability and in a good and orderly direction. And I hope that you have come here this morning expecting more. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Awesome. I love expectation and I love more. I love more than anything, actually. So I just returned from an unexpected trip home. And the highlight of that trip was when I turned down my daughter's street and I saw these two beautiful faces mashed against the glass of the window, expectantly, with joyful anticipation, waiting for their Grammy to turn the corner. You see, those two beautiful faces, in their little minds, they were able to hold a mental image of what Grammy looked like and what her car looked like and when it might come. And with great conviction, they stood by the window, maybe not so patiently, probably wiggling a lot, but they stood by that window in the absolute conviction and knowingness that it was impossible for anything else to happen but for Grammy to turn the corner. And then with great joy and expectancy and peals of delight, the car came around the corner. They were a great demonstration for me and for us of what faith looks like. Can you imagine if you dared to live every day in joyful expectation? We've been studying faith this week and this whole month and the three aspects of faith, which are perception, conviction, and lastly, expectancy. And so today, as we conclude our series on faith in the field of possibilities, I want you to activate that aspect of joyful expectation. Because the universal law tells us that what you expect is what you get. And so if you're wanting something different, it's time to start expecting something different. I shared with many of you last week that our leadership just concluded the study of Mary Morrissey's Prosperity Now. And during that course, Mary Morrissey read to us a quote from Henry David Thoreau that's actually the conclusion of his book On Walden Pond. And what she told us was this was a set of instructions for making our dreams become a reality. And so I want to share those directions with you today. Thoreau writes, if one advances confidently in the direction of their dream, endeavoring to live the life that they are imagining, one passes an invisible boundary, and all sorts of things begin to occur that never otherwise would have occurred. One begins to meet with a success unexpected in common hours. This quote embodies that whole spirit of expectancy, and it also speaks to a faith with feet. You know, oftentimes when we think of faith, we think of it as a state of being, a state of consciousness. But faith is dynamic. Faith is active. Many of us grew up hearing the scripture, faith without works is dead. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to work at faith. Because faith, like all of our spiritual abilities, is part of who we are. It's what we come here with. We have all of these capabilities, all of these abilities that we either use from our human perspective or we use from our higher consciousness, our Christ self. And so you're born with faith. How do you think you took your first step? Spoke your first word? Every day we use faith. Every time you turn on your car, tie your shoe, open the oven, you're exercising faith. So we have faith. So the work of faith is to put our actions where our faith is. To examine what is it we're putting our faith in, and how do we act on that faith. So our first set of directions are action words. Advance confidently. How do we move forward towards our dreams? So Henry David Thoreau spent 2 years, 2 days, 2 months, and 2 hours on Walden Pond. It was an experiment for him. He wanted to know that he was living his life fully. He wanted to know what it meant to realize your dreams, what it took to live a complete life. And so he writes about that experience. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. How many of you want to live? Like, I mean, live. Yes?
Yes.
Want to wake up and live.
Yes.
And so to live fully means to live deliberately. To live deliberately means to make decisions, to move forward, to take actions on what we want our lives to look like. You know, throughout this series, I've continued to ask you, what would you think, see, feel, do if you knew your dream was coming, that it was right about here? How would that change the way that you move forward in the world? And so part of living deliberately is knowing what is true for us. Knowing what it is that gives us the courage, the motivation to move forward. And so what is that one universal truth that you know that will help you advance confidently? I've shared that throughout my ministerial journey. There were many times when I doubted, when I was worried, when I was anxious, when I didn't know how tuition was going to be paid, when I wanted to throw up my hands and go, really, this isn't my thing. But there was a phrase that I held to. The universe is abundant, and I have everything I need. And it was true for me. Throughout my life, there was never a moment when I didn't have what I needed. And so I clung to that as my truth so that it could push me forward. What is it that helps you move confidently in the direction of your dreams? Now, my loving wife will tell you I'm not a direction person. All right, when we buy a shelving unit, I've already got it scattered across the garage floor, multiple tools, everything everywhere. And she's just reading the first line of the directions. So it's important for me to understand that to advance confidently, I need a direction, right? Everybody I know, most people I know, get in their car with a destination in mind, right? You don't just get in there and randomly start driving around, unless you're my father, and he calls that a joyride. So even as a joyride, there is a direction, right? There's a destination. It's to have fun. There's a purpose. So we too need to know what direction we're going towards. And we need to know what our dream is. What really lights you up? Are you really passionate about? What do you really want to experience in your life? One of the things that I appreciate about our leadership council is when we are trying to make difficult decisions, or when we are trying to decide if we're going to introduce something new, if we're going to do something different, someone always asks the question, how is this in alignment with our mission and vision? You see, a spiritual community cannot thrive if it doesn't know where it's going, if it doesn't have a direction. And that is what our mission and vision is for us. What is your mission? What is your vision? And have you stopped lately to ask yourself, are my actions, are my words, are my thoughts moving me in that direction? Are they in an alignment with that? With where I want to go? With who I want to be? The phrase goes on to say, endeavoring to live the life they are imagining. Endeavoring. So endeavoring just means effort. I love that because one of the things that I learned in recovery was progress, not perfection, right? I can't always do it right. Sometimes I can't figure it out. Sometimes I just don't want to, right? The good news is that we only have to make the effort to live the life we're imagining. We only have to try it on. And we don't always have to do it right. There are going to be days I'm just going to eat ice cream. And there are going to be days that Cindy takes a nap. The good news is that each of us have within us a God positioning system. We have an internal GPS that lets us know when we are missing the mark, when we have stepped off the track. And when we tune into that system, it helps us adjust. Adjust our course, adjust our sails, adjust our rudder, so that we're headed back in the direction where we need to go. So endeavor to live the life we are imagining. What does it look like to put that on, to live the life you are imagining? Mary Morrissey says that the universe reads our intention by our attention. So the universe delivers to us what we ask for based on where we're putting our attention. So I can have the very best of intentions of losing weight, of looking slim, of traveling the world. But if I'm going to Baskin Robbins every day, or if I'm spending a lot of money at Starbucks, my attention is not where my intention is. And those have to line up. I have to live the life I'm imagining. I have to be willing to put that on and to put my attention where I want the ship to sail, in the direction I want it to go. Thoreau goes on to say that when we advance confidently in the direction of our dreams, endeavoring to live the life that we are imagining, one passes an invisible boundary. All of us have had those moments where we felt stuck. Anybody not felt stuck? I'll loan you some of my stuckness. Right? Where you thought nothing was moving, nothing was going forward, nothing was in your timing. And then all of a sudden, there's a shift. All of a sudden, it's like the things open up. We call it things falling into place, right? We call it things coming together. What we don't realize is that we've been gathering steam. It didn't just happen. It just so happened at that moment we broke through. But it was the advancing confidently. It was imagining the life. It was the endeavoring that got us to that place where all of a sudden resistance and doubt slip away. I like to call it spiritual Drano. Sometimes I feel like the pipes are clogged. Like I just can't get anywhere. But if I keep doing what I know to do, if I keep moving in that direction, if I keep affirming the truths that I know, if I keep living as though it's getting ready to happen any minute, eventually there'll be enough energy. That snowball that's running down the hill is going to break the barrier. And suddenly divine flow opens up. And I have clarity of mind. have a clear perception of what I want. I have a conviction, a strength to carry on. And I have the expectancy, the joyful expectancy that it's going to be here any minute. That's about that invisible boundary. Finally, he says, one begins to meet with a success unexpected in common hours. So let's talk about what expected success in common hours looks like. So I used to hear a phrase from a friend of mine who would say, when I would go to her and complain that something had turned out exactly the way it always turned out, usually a relationship, and she would say to me, Glenda, if you keep doing what you've done, you're going to keep getting what you got. That if you continue to think the same thoughts, act the same way, speak the same words, the universe, in an act of faith, has no choice but to say, well, yes, of course, I'll give you another bad relationship. Oh, you hate your job? Oh, here, let me give you another one you'll like less. The universe has no choice because we are using common behavior and expecting a different result. So unexpected success. So to have an unexpected success in the common hour means that we have to be willing to change. We have to be willing to take uncommon action. We have to be willing to step out of our comfort zone. We have to be willing to think different thoughts. We have to be willing to correct our course so that it's in alignment with who we are and where we want to go and what we want to be. And when we do that, then nothing can stand in our way. Nothing. You know, when he talks about passing that invisible boundary, there's a little piece that he says, all sorts of things begin to occur that never otherwise would have occurred. That means that when we put ourselves in that position, when we put ourselves in that frequency and that energy where we're moving in the direction and we pass that boundary, just the right people enter our lives. Just the right circumstances appear. We have a mentor who says, you know, you ought to think about that church up there in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Right? You have people who say, you know, I've been thinking I'd like to go to Portugal. I think it'd be pretty cool to hike the El Camino. All of a sudden, when we pass that boundary, when we change our thinking, things start to line up for us. People come into our experience. Circumstances create themselves that help move us forward into that unexpected success in the common hour. These are a set of directions. You can choose to follow them or not. But remember that what you expect, you get. And so today, I want to challenge you to start thinking about, what are you expecting? Are you expecting it's all going to be a bust? Are you expecting that it's never going to change? Are you expecting that you're too old, too fat, too poor, too something that's not enough to have the life that you dream of? Or are you expecting, like those little faces pressed up on the glass, are you in joyful anticipation that everything you desire is right here, just around the corner, just waiting for you? If you're ready for your dreams to come true, then I invite you to close your eyes right now and to hear the directions. If one advances confidently in the direction of their dreams, endeavoring to live the life they are imagining, one passes an invisible boundary. And all sorts of things begin to occur that never otherwise would have occurred. One begins to meet with a success unexpected in common hours. Happy trails, my friends. Namaste.